Good evening, Dungeon Masters. I'm Baron Durop. We'll get a small group today. Only 5 of us in the chat right now. That's probably my fault. Somehow I forgot to upload a thumbnail to the stream. But, so everybody just got like a gray box when they got the push notification, which isn't any good. But I'm glad the 4 of you are here to hang out. So just feel free to jump into the chat and start chatting us up. I don't have my wife with me today. The Baroness is not here. She is currently doing some yoga teacher training. Normally she would be like managing the chat and whatever. She's good at keeping me from having to focus on like too many things at once. So I'll probably burn myself today as we go through the next batch of Livonian Sword Order members. I'm embarrassed to say, somehow I had one slip through the cracks on me, and like one from back in February. Totally missed it. And so I'm catching up, and we've got a new one that we also need to do today. So let's get into it. So we've got 7 people hanging out. Hi, everybody. What's going on? Feel free to ask some questions, and I'll try to answer them as I burn myself. But here we go. We've got the first Sword Order inductee of the day. This one's going to James Spain. Thank you very much. By the way, if you are not familiar with James Spain's work, he is an extremely prolific game writer. Has written for all kinds of IP. I'll let you Google him. He'd probably be bashful for me to talk about it. He doesn't know that. But yeah, you should go check out his work. I'm honored to have him as a patron, just hanging out, because he's written for all kinds of stuff. Like the Lord of the Rings franchise, Star Wars, Zorro. I mean, the list goes on. Google him. But yeah, anyway, James, thank you for becoming a Sword Order member, and we'll let the burning begin. I'm sure I'm gonna have like singed fingers because my wife isn't here. So do you all have any stuff you want to talk about? Some world building stuff? I'm working on like 3 different scripts right now, all in different orders. I'm kind of bouncing around. I was going to publish a video this week, but I didn't like the way the script was turning out. So I got nearly all the way through editing, and I got to the conclusion of the video, and I was just like, it's not quite right. It doesn't hit right. So I'm going to re-record it, but at least like most of the editing is done. So, like the higher thirds images and stuff like that, most of that'll be fine. So it'll be a quick edit job once I get it done, but it's delayed for that reason. But that probably means that I'll also have another video like right on its heels, hopefully. I don't know. I've been really busy lately. Also, I'm about to a point where I can talk to you about some super secret stuff that I've been working on behind the scenes that I'd like to share with you guys about like a micro convention that I'm getting ready to do. It just I was like laying in bed one morning, woke up, and I just started thinking to myself about something, and I Googled it, and I was like, I bet I could do that. And it just exploded from there. I didn't mean for it to, and like the next thing I know, here I am doing it. So it's pretty wild. But anyway, we get some questions while this first seal is solidifying. The wax is melted, and I've not burned myself. Let's see here. Bellamrus asks, if all tabletop games disappeared from human knowledge and you got to reintroduce one book, which one would you pick? Oh, man. Knowing what I know now. Well, see, like that. Okay, so I'm assuming that this question implies that I personally get to maintain knowledge of the things that are going on in the world, like in the world of RPGs, and nobody else gets to remember, and all of them cease to exist. The one that I would bring back would probably be Shadowdark. I really feel like Shadowdark is the synthesis of everything good about 5th edition and the entirety of the OSR movement. It is a new chapter in that movement. It is a a new textbook has been printed of what the direction of game design, at least in that space, should look like. Like, yeah, you got story games like Torchbearer and Fate Core and stuff like that. But I think for the most part, Shadowdark is the new direction we all should be going on. Let's see what else we got. We got some other questions. While you're burning, have you seen the Myth Bastionland playtest? It's got some pretty amazing hex crawl ideas. I have poked around and looked at it, and I frequently chat with Chris McDowell, who, and let's see if this is who. Oh, it was almost perfect. I'm going to leave it because that was amazing. That was my first good attempt. I'm going to leave it. But yeah, no, Chris McDowell, check your spelling on his name because it's constant that people misspell his name on the internet. It's honestly an ongoing joke. But yeah, Mythic Bastionland is pretty sweet. It looks like my computer just died here. Hold on a second. The thing I was using to talk to you all, is it still up? Apparently the stream is still going because I also have it up on my phone. But did you all disappear on me? Let's see here. Nope, you're still there. Okay. So that's 2 seals, and I have not burned myself. So Marcos, what's new? We've got some crazy stuff going on. We've got some wild stuff going on. I didn't expect it to happen, but here we go. But yes, let's see here. So I've not looked at the Mythic playtest yet in detail, but I remember he showed it to me. Gosh, was it like 4 or 5 months ago when it was first getting cobbled together? And I saw some like burgeoning ideas. It looked really good. I need to go check it out. But yeah, that whole ecosystem of games. Like if I ever were to design a game, it would probably be a sci-fi odd hack. So, or an odd like, what are they called? Something like that, like Cairn, and there's a couple of other games. Mouse Raider is another really good one. So, okay, so my wife is out of town, but I saw that she left her signet ring here. And technically, it's also the coat of arms of my house, so I'm going to use it. Stop me. It's technically legally binding, right? It is my name. So, but I'm sure she wouldn't mind. But so we've got 21 people in the chat. Woo, that's a lot of wax. Oh my gosh, don't burn myself. Boom. There we go. The first one is done. No burns. I'm shocked. So let's see. Lano asks, what's your favorite magic system and why? I'm going to have to say, I assume when you say that, like, what is my favorite, like, mechanical system for managing spells in an RPG, not like a theoretical magic thing, like in world building. And I definitely am going to go with Glog spells. And I say that because Glog spells are really simple to read. So generally speaking, they're simple to read. So they don't slow you down at the table. Gosh, I nailed this one. Usually I have to redo the seals and stuff, but I'm on fire today. Not burning myself either. I'm impressed. But yeah, no, the Glog spells do a really good job of being as succinct as possible, while also having a fun mechanic for managing like how powerful the spell is. So, because there's 2 variables in it. For people who aren't familiar, you should go look up Goblin Punch Glog Magic, GLOG. It is a system where you have a spell description, and in the spell description, you have 2 variables, dice and sum. And you have a pool of spelled dice that's related to your character somehow. And maybe it depends on the game system, but when you finish a long rest, for example, you get all your spell dice back. And then you can say, I want to cast Fireball. And I'm going to use 8 spell dice. So you pick up 8 spell dice, and then it's maybe like the spell dice is 5 times the dice in feet wide, and then the sum is the damage to all the creatures. And you roll it, there you go. And so the more dice you add to it, the bigger the fireball gets, and the more powerful the spell gets. What's fun, or like the damage. What's fun about that is that on generally speaking, on 6s, the spell or the spell dice has like some sort of negative adverse effect. So the more explosive and the more powerful you choose to make the spell, the more chances you run of rolling a 6 on the dice. So usually it's like you have to make a charisma or a wisdom save to stop some sort of like madness from setting in, or maybe you take like a level of exhaustion if you fail the save, or there's all kinds of stuff you could mechanically apply to it. But generally, if you fail the save, every time you roll a 6, something bad happens to your character. So I like there being like a negative trade-off to just pumping a spell, like going full Nova Super Saiyan into the maximum level possible, recognizing that when the spell goes off, your character may be catatonic at the end of the day. So yeah, I love having that push and pull trade-off. It's like, how powerful do I need to make this, polymorph spell? So anyway, thanks to you, James Spain, for joining the Sword Order, the Livonian Sword Order. We have our next one today. This is going to be a short stream if I keep successfully sealing these waxes so efficiently. Our next one is going to Ryan Willem. Thank you very much for joining the Sword Order. Let's see here. Do we have any other questions before I start burning my fingers here? Building encounter and omen tables for your hex map based off of a proximity to a dungeon adventure myth is a new idea to me. Hexcrawl finally makes sense. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think people have done a very poor job of explaining the utility of a hex crawl. And it's only recently that I find that it's starting to become more mainstream how much like exploration heft you can just bolt onto the fact that you have these hexes, which is honestly the whole point. Like the whole point is to make exploration interesting. And if it's not interesting, then what are you even doing? You're just rolling dice for random encounters every time they move through a hex, and that's boring. So yeah, by having like omens added to your random tables, or like weird like adventure sites, or like odd stacks of stones or stuff like that added to your hex random tables, or weather environment stuff, that's all prime stuff. So, but yeah. N-sided dice was wondering how her seal was going to get on there. At first I was like, oh, she's out of town and I've got to do this, but she's so she's got a ring. And then I was like just looking for my wax and seal, and she left it here for me. I didn't even have to ask her. But yeah, she's at a yoga retreat, or she's a yoga teacher training retreat, eating tons of granola. she's becoming her full granola self, but very, very health focused. I worry she's going to come back and say, we have to go vegan now, which I'm not sure. I might be able to go vegetarian, but I don't think I could go full vegan. That would be too much. So anyway, let's do Ryan Willem's seal here. Here we go. Burning fingers. You all got any more questions, stuff you want to talk about? Let's see here. I'm gonna focus on this and not burn myself. That's the goal. That's the goal. Do not burn myself. And I know people in the chat are gonna say, you can get the melting cup, but isn't it a heck of a lot more fun to watch me almost burn myself? Like, let's be real. Oh gosh, that's hot. I'm not gonna try and read the chat right now. I see you guys chatting. Not gonna do it. Okay. Here we go. Is it big enough? It is big enough. And boom. Got it. Oh man, I'm on fire. Not in a bad way. Okay, so let's read the chat here. Since there's no such thing as perfection, what would you say is missing from Shadowdark? Poop too cool for you, asks. That's a heck of a screen name. What would I say is missing from Shadowdark? I really like running like two different layers of RPG at the same time. I love having political intrigue above ground and dungeon crawls below ground, where the political intrigue requires the players to go to the below ground to get the things from the dungeons to resolve the problems that are happening with the political intrigue. And to have interesting political intrigue, she's got so many good random tables for stuff in, as you explore and do the D&D stuff, as you do the environmental stuff, but it's very light on faction management and faction ideas to rapidly flesh out, like, what does this faction do? And obviously you could just go pick up like Knave 2 or Maze Rats or something like that and randomly generate some, or through the lens of geopolitics, look at your map and see like these factions have access to these resources and would logically have these ideologies and would be scared of these things, and rapidly build it out itself. But rolling the dice and then figuring out how to justify those factions based on their geography is always super fun. And that's the only thing that I wish was more fleshed out in Shadowdark. That's the only thing. But there are so many other great tools for doing that. Like, I'm not upset by the fact that it's light on that kind of stuff. So no big deal. No big deal. Let's see. Do we have another question before I go on to burning myself? Oh, Kaylin, thank you very much for the donation. I really appreciate it. You didn't have to do that. I feel like now I should have turned on some sort of charity event. I usually do charities when I'm like doing a real proper live stream. But I don't know, maybe I'll kick this back over to the Arbor Day Foundation like I'm doing for all of those. So thank you very much. Let's see here. Tim, I've been building a sandboxy hack of Symborum. Am I saying that right? I don't know. I'm not heard of that. My hex scroll suggestions have been absolute gold. Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'm glad you're finding it useful. What's your favorite real world location you'd like to see used as a dungeon? Ooh, my favorite real world location. There's not many real world locations that apply as dungeons. Abandoned shopping malls are super creepy. There was a shopping mall here in the town where I live that was closed for about 4 or 5 years, and it recently was purchased by Amazon. I'm going to burn myself. I'm going to shut up and not burn myself. Oh, gosh. Oh, gosh. Okay. Not burning myself. Boom. Got it. Okay. Yeah, there was a shopping mall. I've shared it on my community tab. If you go, you'll have to scroll way back like 6 months ago, probably. It's just mega creepy because like the ceiling has fallen in a few spots, so like rainwater leaks in. There's a couple of vines growing in the grout in between cracks in the tile, and there's the old security booth where like they kept an almanac and photo albums of the mall through the years, and there's supposed to be security at the time guarding the place, so the people who snuck in were almost caught by security, which would have been super bad. That would have been criminal trespassing. They would have been in jail for a long time. But it's pretty wild to go into an abandoned shopping mall. Those would probably be the things, especially like think about if it had to be abandoned and the storefronts that were there decided that even though some of the things that were left behind were highly valuable, that it would have been more expensive to like pack them up and ship them to another store and get them sold at another store, or like liquidate them online or something like that. So there's just like perfectly good appliances and jewelry like left in a Sears. Like that is a looter's dream, right? It's like, I'm gonna go get a bunch of gold and a washer and dryer and hook it up, in a post-apocalyptic setting. Like, I'm gonna go get these appliances and hook them up to like a rain catchment system that I have on my garage, so that I have water. that would have been super cool, and a solar power for the power, or a solar cell for the power. That would have been super cool. I don't know stuff. I think a shopping mall would have to be the one. So let's see here. Do we have any other questions? TSL frontman, what's your favorite real? Yeah, that was what we just answered. A repeat questions. Do you plan to attend Mythicon, replacing Mace in Charlotte this year? Mr. Gunn asks. That is in November. I probably will be there just because I've made some decent friends with a couple of other YouTubers in the space. Wylock will probably be there because he's got, if I'm not mistaken, he's got family either nearby or on the way. So I'll probably go hang out with him. He's working on a new RPG called Neon Skies, which you should go check out on his channel, Wylock's Armory. The professor usually shows up. DM Scotty usually shows up, so I'll probably be there. I also got invited to a convention up in Pittsburgh. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but I'm supposed to be talking to them. And there's also a convention that may be happening near here next year that I will talk about very soon. Crummy says on fire, literally, yes. Inside, yeah, not literally, but also literally. Let's see here. Do you feel people's recent departure from D&D is a result of the OGL scandal, or was it just natural transition due to 5e's age? I think, but there's so much to just. Oh man, I have to be careful how much of a rant I go on here. There's so many reasons that if it were just the OGL, I don't think people would have been leaving. But it's not just the OGL, is it? Like, they've had so much recent drama. Wizards of the Coast has had so much recent drama with the Magic the Gathering brand and the way they've handled the Magic stuff, especially recently now with the Pinkerton private investigation scandal that happened, where they showed up at a YouTuber's door and demanded the cards. And hilariously, he bought those cards legally. He didn't have to hand them over. They just scare tacticked him into giving up the cards. And quite honestly, he probably could have just handed them a stack of commons that looked like they were in decent condition, that were the right number, and they probably would have left him alone. Of course, the hindsight's 2020, right? Like, you can't blame the guy for not thinking of this on the spot while he's getting pressured by a bunch of goons sent from Wizards of the Coast. But and then Professor astutely discovered, it completely went under the radar for me, that they were paying certification boards off to give them awards for being environmentally friendly companies. Like, come on. It's just one thing after another. The OGL is not the straw that broke the camel's back, but everybody has a different back, and everybody requires a different amount of straw. And there's plenty of straw. So it's just a matter of how much disgust can you handle from Wizards of the Coast before you stop participating and start exploring other, honestly, better stuff. If you like the crunch, go for Pathfinder. Check out Roll for Combat. They've got great supplements for Pathfinder. Their Battle Zoo stuff is hilarious. If you like Pokemon-esque kind of stuff, they've been a prior supporter of the channel. If you want to see what D&D was like back in the day, there's so much old school Rococo, as I call it now, because it's honestly getting kind of overwrought. The amount of stuff that is like there's just so much creativity happening in that space. There's all kinds of story games you can play, like Torchbearer is something I want to try out. But there's so much stuff besides fifth edition. Like, go check all this stuff out. If you've ever needed any kind of prompting to shake the reins off from such a icky company that's just constantly abusing its fan base. But yeah, so we've finished this one. Ryan Willem, thank you very much for joining the Livonian Sword Order. I am on a streak here of not having to redo these. It's pretty wild. So this is the last one. Let's see. Daniel Ireton, thank you very much for joining. We're going to get started on this one. Let's see. Do we have any questions? I feel like we've gotten a lot of questions here. Recent departure. Yep, we just asked that one. Is Free League very cool setting? I'll have to look it up. I've not heard of it. Tim says, yes, I'm answering it. Let's see here. Transit system under Disneyland. I didn't know there was a transit system under Disneyland. That's creepy. I think I've been to Disneyland one time, and that was like 20 years ago. Is that new? Did they bore that out? I don't know. I never remembered that being there. Let's see. Liminal. Somebody said something about liminal horror. I'm scrolling too much. Liminal horror RPG as an abandoned mall module. Yes, that would be great. Liminal, for those of you who aren't aware, liminal horror is like a SCP Foundation / X-Files type odd hack RPG. It uses similar mechanics to Into the Odd, and it's pretty slick. Check that one out. Liminal spaces are definitely some that people should be checking out, John. Sewers of Paris or the Catacombs of Rome. That'd be great. Let's see here. Yes, the Necropolis. It was built on top of that. You guys are chatty today. Thanks for hanging out with me by myself. It makes me feel good that you don't just show up to see my wife as well. Let's see here. Let's see. I've heard of using malls for all sorts of games, like a racetrack, non-dystopian settings. Super Duper Mart from Fallout. That one's a fun one. Let's see here. And Mr. Gunn, yeah, if you catch me at Mythicon, just walk right up and introduce yourself. Unless I'm like beelining to the bathroom, then stay out of my way, please. If you catch me later in the evening, I'll probably chat you up while I'm drinking my 6th or 7th beer. So let's see here. Yes, the OGL was the stone that started the avalanche. It's kind of interesting how the OGL has morphed over time, because it started as just like a couple of guys saying, wait a minute, we can use the like the open gaming license, like we can use the whole OSR, like how OSR started. Like, it started because people were disenfranchised with 3rd edition. And they were like, wait a minute, we can go back and republish effectively these old things, like with Osric and Swords and Wizardry and OSE and stuff like that. And then removing the OGL is what pissed people off again. Or the threat of removing it. So let's see here. What would it take to get you and the other big names in art to do a roundtable discussion? What would it take? I've done roundtables before. I've like, who is it? Fred from How to D&D. He runs roundtables. Like, they've got a whole crew of them that run roundtables. I've done them before. It's been a while though. The channel was much smaller. Like, I had less than 10,000 subs back when I did them. I don't know. It wouldn't take much. They would just have to reach out. I had to tell them I couldn't do it for a while because I had been so busy. Oh crap! I'm gonna burn myself. Hold on. Here we go. See, what I don't like is, what terrifies me is I use my dominant hand to light it, and then I have to use my non-dominant hand to spread the wax, and I have to like flip the wax stick from hand to hand while it might be on fire, and that's just, I don't know, high risk. So anyway, where was I? What would it take? Oh yeah, we answered that. It wouldn't take much. They just need to invite me. I personally like doing live streams with like one other person. That way we can bounce ideas, and it also doesn't get too cacophonous. Like there's not a whole lot of chatter going on, and it gets difficult sometimes when you have more than one person because people start talking over top of each other. Let's see here. Similar question to 5e's age. Do you think D&D will grow stale now that they're doing away with editions? I think that's a lie. I think this is going to be a 5th edition revised. And when I say revised, it means that they're just revamping the rules such that they work better in a virtual tabletop environment. That's all that's happening here, is they're tuning them a little bit and making them so that they're easier to program. And they're taking out a lot of the odd complexity of there's some abilities that are much more loosey-goosey that you have to figure out at the table. Those are gone. That's all that's happening. But effectively, it's still going to be 5th edition, just a revised edition. Eventually, they will move to a 6th edition. You can bet your money on that. Let's see here. John, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate it. John also, by the way, is an old friend of mine who has who moved away a number of years ago, and we occasionally catch up. So, John, I'm glad you were in the stream. Let's see here. What's your favorite sci-fi RPG? Mothership. And I wish Traveler was just a lighter, like Cepheus engine is kind of lighter weight, but not really. It's more of like the OSR remake of Traveler, if you will. I don't know. I feel like Mothership is a D100 roll under system with a scaling panic system that you have to roll over your panic points or your character freaks out in space. Check that out. But I would like to do, I don't know. I grow frustrated with the sci-fi RPGs out on the market because the kind of game that I want to play in a sci-fi game doesn't really exist mechanics-wise. So, of course, that means I'll have to make one of my own. But, yeah, I don't know. Traveler's cool. Mothership's cool. I wish there was a monkey in the middle. I wish there was something that had some light psionic abilities that wasn't so hefty. Traveler has a lot of like storytelling elements, political intrigue elements. I don't know. What is it about Traveler that just doesn't hit right for me? I think it's not military oriented enough. There's not enough tactical combat, which is also a problem I have with Into the Odds. I want a little bit more tactical crunch. And that's honestly a problem I have with most OSR games, is that there's not quite enough tactical crunch for me. I really like the opportunity to get, a UDT out on the table and push minis around and have it matter. That's kind of where I'm at. So, oh yeah, Mr. Gunn says, haha, no edition. Windows 10. Oh wait, we mean Windows 11. Now we're working on Windows 12. Let's see here. TLS Frontman says that the fourth edition style mechanics. A lot of people knock on 4th edition. I just think 4th edition should have been named something other than Dungeons and Dragons. Because I think if it were a different game, it was another RPG that was produced by Wizards of the Coast, effectively competing with themselves, I think it would have been more successful. Of course, that would have been silly to have 2 games running side by side. Daggerheart, Illuminated Worlds. But I think it would have been silly to have both of them running side by side. But I think that would have saved the reputation of Fourth Edition. I think for the kind of game that it was very well executed, but it did not feel like Dungeons and Dragons, and that's why everyone hated it. Yeah, Chromie, I am also waiting patiently on both hands for my Mothership box set. Gold Saber says they appreciate the flexibility of Fate, giving you more confidence in GMing. That's good. I feel like Fate is this really weird, like, master's degree thesis on storytelling and game design, because it does a really good job of treating the narrative as if it is crunch because of all the aspects that you constantly are laying out on the table. Something I've noticed, though, is that the more you play the game and the more comfortable you get with it, though, there's so many aspects on the field. Like, once you get really good at just turning everything into an aspect, that it inherently becomes extremely crunchy in a very strange way. Like, even it's slowing the game down even more than 5th edition, I find. So that frustrates me about Fate Core. Also, it's just such a bizarre way compared to other RPGs on the market of hand. And I've got a whole video rant about it. Go look that up if you're not familiar. The best RPG everyone hates, everyone rightfully hates. Yeah, go check that out. But yeah, Fate Core is irksome to me because it's so close to being so good and so weird. Let's see here. Any love for Cyberpunk 2020 or Red? I've only played Cyberpunk Red one time. It was okay. Like, I wasn't blown away by it. I've played the original Cyberpunk, and that was also a really fresh take on how to have classes for characters. Like, each of them have their role, but you don't have, like, the hit point scaling issue that 5th edition has. I like that. What is the crunchiest RPG that you will go? I've been getting into Mithras RuneQuest 6. I've not played RuneQuest. I don't think I've read RuneQuest. The crunchiest I will go. Okay, so I have a caveat. I will go as crunchy as the players are proficient at the crunch, if that makes sense. I have no interest in playing a crunchy game with players who are also not proficient at crunch. I would happily sit down and play a game of Pathfinder if all of the players were experienced at Pathfinder. I have absolutely no interest anymore in walking through, like, if I'm going to sit down at players at a table and the players are still trying to remember, and this is common with casual players, which die to roll, to, like, if they are still in the problem of picking up a D12 instead of a D20 and rolling that for an attack roll, I'm not going to play Pathfinder with that kind of player. I don't have a problem playing with that kind of player at all. Some of my best players are at that point, and I'm not sure that they're at that mode of thinking. You know, they're just there to hang out and drink a few beers and roll dice and kill goblins. And that's entirely fine. You know, and honestly, I enjoy that kind of casual gaming. But if I'm going to play Pathfinder, I want people who are going to sit down and know, like, if the wizard has to ask questions about what has gone on in the round, that as it has transpired around them, we're done. I'm not playing. Like, if you have to ask me 17 million questions before you decide to cast Fireball, not playing. It's not happening. Like, screw a 30-second sand timer. I want to know what your character is doing with all of its action economy in under 10 seconds. I don't want all of your dice to hit the table at the same time. Attack roll, spell damage roll, all of it. If you are that proficient in the crunch, I will happily play as crunchy as you want. But if we have to stop and ask questions, we have to, like, you have to be well researched as a player. Otherwise, I don't want to fool with it. So it's completely dependent on the players. I hope that answers the question. Let's see here. This is the last seal, guys. This is the last one. But we'll hang out and chat for a while. This has been a short stream. We'll hang out. Let's see here. and then I'll have to get lunch because it's 1. It's 1 o'clock. Not burning my. Oh, almost dropped it. Almost dropped it. Boom. Oh, I messed it up. It put it on crooked. All right, so we're gonna let that cool, and then we'll redo it. The one redo. Okay. So Tim Haldane says, yes, that's exactly my argument. I assume you're talking about the branding issue. Yeah. Let's see here. You guys are quite chatty. Which dungeon crawler system would you recommend? Interested for newbie tabletoppers. If you're wanting to play dungeon crawls with new players, there are 2. Shadowdark and Index Card RPG. And both of them are a blast to play. Index Card RPG is just so fun, especially if your players are really into Zelda, because the loot is so important in Index Card RPG that they walk over to the chest and they kick over the loot crate, and you just roll on a random table and nobody knows, not even the GM knows what you're going to get. It's super fun. You just say, and it makes your prep really light too, because you just say there's 2 treasure chests in this room, there's a treasure chest in this room, and you just kick in the door, kill the goblins, and then get the loot, and nobody knows what the loot's going to be. It's great. So that's super fun, especially if you just are really turn-based combat focused. Index Card is so fun for that. Shadowdark is really good if you want to have the darkest dungeon feeling, because there's the torch mechanics in Shadowdark. So check that one out. Let's see here. What would you do to improve Fate Core? Better writing in the rule book with better examples. It's so opaque. It took I'm not an idiot. And it took me reading that rule book 6 times before it started to click. And I had to play it for 6 months before it really started to dig in, expand my mind enough to understand what was going on. It is not self-aware enough, as far as I'm concerned, of a game. Let's see here. Okay, I'm not burning myself. We've gone the whole time not burning myself. We've got the wax. We're not going to drip. Oh, okay. And go. Excellent. There we go. All right. Yeah, the Pathfinder motto, I have a rule for that. Have you checked out Harnmaster? Never heard of it. If I had pen and paper, I would write it down to Google it later. Let's see here. That's kind of why I stopped playing 5e. The crunch got in the way of my players, Abu says. Yeah, I think the OGL has really started the avalanche, as somebody was saying above. Really, it was the rock that started the avalanche or the mudslide, really, that got people to wake up and look for games other than 5e. And what's really interesting is that they're finding that other than Pathfinder or Ars Magica or really crunchy games like that, it's shocking how crunchy it is. And I've talked to other creators who publish games. This is something that Sean McCoy of Mothership has routinely said, that when people pop into the Mothership Discord and they're arriving there from 5e, and Mothership is their first real indie game outside of 5e, it's they just get this breath of fresh air and relief with how simple the mechanics are. And it's kind of mind-blowing to me how crunchy 5th edition is, and people think it's lightweight. People and compared to 3rd edition, sure, but unless you were 12 years old and totally nerding out on the player's handbook, 3rd edition was impossible to play. There's no way I would go back and play 3rd edition now. Not with players who weren't proficient in it. It's funny though. I still have 3rd edition vernacular pop out when I'm DMing. It's oh, make me a will save. And my players are what is a will save? Let's see. Yeah, ICRPG sounds like a ton of fun. Does random unexpected events and loots really well. Something that's really fun for like a kind of cartoony, gimmicky, um, like environmental thing that I've seen Hanker and Fernail do when he dungeon masters is he has a die with a bunch of arrows on it, and he'll roll like a die and a d6 and multiply the d6 by 5. And like as an environmental shift, everyone has to make a dex save or a strength save to hold on to something as like a gale force wind blows through the battlefield and pushes everything around. So like if you're having like a really epic fight on top of a tower where it's, you know, justified in doing so, that's something fun that he does. Not necessarily dependent on index card RPG, but as the designer, it jogged my memory that that's something he's done before. If you don't have an arrow die, you can just use a D10. Let me grab one. And as it lands on the table, wherever that point is pointing, that's the direction the wind blows. So that's fun. That's actually an old wargaming grenade mechanic for like historical skirmish games. If you roll a D10 and the number is like how many feet or like represents a direction it moves, and the point tells you which direction it goes. That way you don't have to like look on a table or anything as the grenade bounces around. So let's see. Have you ever heard of Arborea? I honestly don't know if the game exists in any other languages but German. I have never read a German RPG except for, what is it? The Black Eye, Die Schwarze Auge. That's the only one I've read. But I'll go look it up. I've never heard of it. Let's see here. Regarding Pathfinder, I am more with Professor Dungeon Master these days. Having a rule for everything slows down the game. I agree. Unless the players know the rules. Like I don't mind, because I'm the kind of person who, if the rule is there and it's important, like how do you handle this very clutch mechanic that could mean a character's death if it goes either way? The game is designed to have an answer for that. And I will stop the game and look it up if it's important for the story. I don't want to make a player feel like they got cheated because the table didn't know the rules when it mattered in the clutch. But if the players don't know by heart at least 90% of the rules, I'm not going to play a crunchy game. Let's see here. When I don't have rules options, 5e is super boring. That's an interesting take. I find 5e is very hackable. Maybe I'm misunderstanding you. Let's see here. 5e character building is so boring as anything. Just make your own subclasses. You know, that's what I would do. If you find it boring, make your own, or like mix and match from different subclasses, and it'll be balanced basically. Yeah, TSL frontman said wargaming is coming out and all the influence of little things. I mean, D&D is a role-playing war game basically. We got people talking about the Genesis system. I love seeing the community just chatting with each other. It's funny. Well, I think this one's done. Let's check the seals. That one's good. And that one's perfect. Excellent. So, Daniel Ayrton, thank you very much for joining the Sword Order. And that wraps up all of ours. Do we have any final questions before we sign out and move on with our day? Thanks for hanging out with me for this hour that we have almost spent with each other. I can't believe it's already been an hour. We only had 3 of them. Gosh, did it take like 3 hours to get through the first time when I had like 9 of them? So let's see here. There's typically a delay, so I'll wait for a minute here because it usually takes like 10 seconds or 20 seconds before you guys hear what I am saying through the internet pipeline. It's kind of wild that this platform exists. It's so strange to me that we can just hang out. And Inside of Dice, yes, no, I did not burn myself. It's a shock. It's an absolute shock. We finished I didn't burn myself. That's what is this the third or the fourth stream of these declaration signings, and I have not burned myself. I'm shocked. So, but anyway, if you guys don't have any more questions, we'll wrap it up here. So thanks for joining, everybody, and I'll see you on the next stream. I'll get some videos wrapped. Oh wait, there was one thing I wanted to talk about. So it looks like I will be doing a convention at a location called Ancient Lore Village here next year in May. It's gonna be pretty wild. If you go Google the location, I made a community post about it to just kind of get a feeler. Go Google the location, Ancient Lore Village. It looks, they would never say it, but probably for legal reasons, but it looks like a location right out of the Shire. So it'll probably be a small microcon type thing, and the venue is really pricey. So there's that, but we'll see what happens. It's in the early formative stages, but make sure that you stay up on my community tab, because I'll probably be releasing a survey to see like what kind of expectations you all have about a convention like that. And I've got some of my own ideas that I'll be presenting, because it's kind of a wild venue. I really want to play D&D there, but it's also a really pricey venue. So like trying to figure out budget and cost is honestly terrifying to make it work and not have another financial disaster on my hands. So, but yeah, stay in touch with that. Let's see here. We got one last question coming in here. Chromie192 wanting to run my first small hex crawl. Any videos or resources you recommend to check out? Let's see. I mean, there's my hex crawl video, but it's not a good hex crawl, like for small scale. I talk about how to set one up in the latest video I've published about Knave 2. You should Google the Gygax 75 challenge. Google that. It's on Itch.io. Check out Itch.io, or check out that booklet on Itch.io, and it'll walk you through like a really bare bones example that's kind of guided by Gygax himself, based on an article he wrote for Dungeon Magazine back in like 75. Really solid advice in there. I've done a video on it, but you'd have to like dig through my back catalog. Bob Worldbuilder also did a really funny video on it. You should go check that out, on the Gygax 75 challenge. That's where I would start. And it's a booklet, it's a checklist, it's a walkthrough. By the time you're done, you will be kicking yourself for how easy it is to set up a extremely fun and engaging game world in a month, in just a month. So anyway, that's where we're gonna end the stream. Thank you guys for hanging out. I'll see you when I see you next time, I guess. Take care, everybody.